Is there a pilot on board?
I never thought my life would feel this heavy at just 32. My name is Saim, and if you ever spot me, I'm usually the guy with tired eyes, a backpack over one shoulder, and my little daughter holding onto my hand like it's her lifeline. Because truth is, she is mine. Her name is Aisha. She's 7, with a smile bright enough to melt glaciers, and questions sharp enough to cut through my exhaustion. I lost her mother 3 years ago in an accident that I still can't talk about without my throat closing up. Since then, it's been just me, trying to play the role of both parents. On this particular morning, we were boarding flight 747, headed from Karachi to Istanbul. It wasn't just another trip. It was supposed to be the beginning of something new, something I wasn't even sure I deserved. We were in row 12, seats A and B. I remember tightening Aisha's seatbelt and whispering, "Adventure starts here, Mary John." She giggled, clutching her stuffed bunny. But the truth? My chest felt like a battlefield. I was scared. Scared of starting over, scared of failing her again, scared of the silence that crept in every night when I tucked her in bed alone. As the engines roared and the plane lifted into the sky, I closed my eyes. Exhaustion swallowed me whole. And that's when it began. The moment that would change everything. I don't know how long I slept, but I woke up to chaos. A loud, trembling voice echoed through the cabin speakers. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is your captain speaking. If there is any licensed pilot on board, please identify yourself immediately." My heart skipped. Passengers gasped, heads whipping around in panic. My daughter clutched my arm, whispering, "Baba, kia hua?" I sat frozen. My past, something I had buried deep, suddenly clawed its way back. Because once upon a time, before life broke me, before I gave up on everything, I was a pilot. And now, in row 12, fate was calling my name again. The cabin was thick with fear. I could hear whispers, the sound of a baby crying, the metallic creak of overhead bins as people shifted uneasily. But what struck me most was the silence after that announcement, an eerie silence, like everyone was holding their breath, waiting for a miracle. My daughter's small hand tightened around mine. "Baba, AAP pilot ho na?" Her innocent eyes pierced straight through me. I swallowed hard. For years, I had buried that part of me. I had walked away from the cockpit, from the uniform, from the life I once lived. After the accident that took my wife, I had convinced myself I was unworthy of the skies. But now our fate had dragged me back at 30,000 feet. Before I could overthink, the flight attendant appeared, her voice trembling. "Sir, are you a pilot?" I nodded slowly. Gasps around me turned into a ripple of murmurs. Passengers stared, some with hope, others with doubt. I unbuckled my seatbelt, leaned down, and whispered to Aisha, "Beta, stay strong. Baba ko jana hai." She nodded bravely, clutching her bunny. My heart broke as I walked away, her eyes following me like I might disappear forever. They guided me toward the cockpit. My pulse pounded in my ears. And then I saw her. The captain. She wasn't what I expected. She was young, striking, her posture firm even as worry clouded her face. Her uniform fit her like it was stitched by destiny itself. And her eyes, sharp, determined, but hiding a storm. "Who are you?" she demanded, not with arrogance but urgency. "Saim. Former commercial pilot. Licensed." My voice was steady, though my soul trembled. She studied me for half a second, as though weighing my truth against the lives of everyone on board. Then she exhaled. "I'm Captain Kinza. My co-pilot just collapsed mid-flight. Possible stroke. It's just me up here now, and I can't handle this turbulence alone." Her words hit like thunder. I glanced at the lifeless figure slumped beside her, oxygen mask strapped on, medics trying desperately to stabilize him. My throat went dry. This was no simulation. This was life and death. Kinza turned back to the controls, her hands steady but her jaw clenched. The storm outside rattled the windows. Lightning flashed across the dark sky. "Are you ready to step in, Saim?" she asked, her voice quieter now. Not just a question. A challenge. I hesitated for a fraction of a second, then placed my hand on the co-pilot seat. Yes. Sliding into that chair felt like slipping into an old skin. Familiar, yet terrifying. My fingers hovered over the instruments, and memories flooded back. Late-night flights, my wife waiting at the terminal, the pride of carrying lives safely across the world. Kinza shot me a quick look, her eyes a blend of doubt and curiosity. You've been out of the skies for a while, haven't you? I smirked faintly. You can tell. Your hesitation, she said, gripping the yoke as the plane jolted violently. I steadied my breathing. Maybe. But trust me, Captain. I won't let this plane fall. Her lips twitched, almost a smile, but the storm outside roared louder, cutting through the fragile tension. For the next 10 minutes, we wrestled with the skies together. Kinza barked headings, I adjusted flaps. She managed thrust, I handled comms. It was as though we had known each other's rhythm for years. But then, something shifted. Autopilot failure, she muttered, slamming a switch. Red lights blinked across the panel. The aircraft tilted sharply, passengers screaming as luggage crashed from overhead. Kinza's knuckles whitened on the controls. I grabbed the throttle, fighting back the plane's dive. Adrenaline surged through me. And through it all, her voice cut through the chaos. Stay with me, Saim. Don't you dare freeze. And in that moment, something awakened inside me. The old Saim, the pilot, the leader, the man who once believed he could carry the weight of the world. He was alive again. The plane steadied. Just enough. For now. But as I glanced at Kinza, sweat dripping down her temple, something unspoken passed between us. Not just teamwork. Something deeper. A strange recognition. Like fate hadn't just thrown a storm at us. It had introduced us. Her words struck harder than the turbulence shaking the aircraft. I know who you are. For a second, I froze, my hands gripping the throttle, my eyes flicking toward Kinza. She wasn't looking at the storm anymore. She was staring directly at me. What do you mean? I asked, trying to keep my voice steady, though the plane shuddered again, alarms flashing red across the cockpit. Her jaw tightened. You're not just any pilot who quit. You're Captain Saim Qureshi, the one who walked away after, she hesitated, as if searching for the right words. After the tragedy. The world seemed to tilt harder than the aircraft itself. My chest tightened. My wife's face, her last smile, the funeral that broke me, it all came rushing back like a floodgate had burst. How do you know that? I demanded, my voice low, rough. Kinza didn't flinch. Because I was there. Not in your life, but in the academy. You were a legend to us junior cadets, Saim. The youngest to ever get captaincy. The man who everyone said was born for the skies. And then, her eyes softened. You vanished. The plane jolted violently, throwing a clipboard to the floor. But I was barely aware of it. My secret, the pain I had carried like a locked box, wasn't secret anymore. I forced my gaze back to the horizon, gripping the yoke as thunder boomed outside. I lost my wife. After that, I lost myself. Flying felt like betrayal. Every time I touched the skies, I heard her voice. I saw her face. I couldn't do it. Kinza's silence stretched, broken only by the storm rattling the fuselage. Then she spoke, softer now. You think running from the sky will bring her back? The question cut deep. Before I could answer, the intercom buzzed. Captain, passengers are panicking. We need assurance. Kinza nodded at me. You handle it. My throat went dry. It had been years since I'd addressed passengers. But as I picked up the mic, I saw Aisha's face flash in my mind, her eyes trusting me completely. I pressed the button. Ladies and gentlemen, this is your co-pilot speaking. My name is Saim Qureshi. I know you're scared. I am too. But I promise you, we are not alone up here. We will get through this storm. For your families. For your children. For the people waiting for you on the ground. So hold on tight, pray with us, and trust me when I say, I will not let go. The cabin fell quiet. Even from the cockpit I could feel the shift. Fear hadn't vanished, but hope had entered the air like oxygen. When I set the mic down, Kinza was watching me, something flickering in her gaze. Respect. And something else, something warmer. "You still have it," she whispered. I wanted to say nothing. But part of me, the part one thought was long buried, wanted to believe her. The storm worsened. Rain battered the windshield. We worked side by side, hands moving across controls in sync, our breaths heavy but aligned. And then, another twist. "Captain," the radio cracked, "air traffic control urgent. You're entering restricted airspace. You must divert immediately." Kinza cursed under her breath. With this turbulence, a diversion means riskier terrain. I scanned the charts, adrenaline spiking. "But if we don't, we'll face military radar. That's a whole different storm." She shot me a look. "What do you suggest?" I hesitated, then spoke with the authority I thought I'd lost. "Trust me. Follow my lead." For a beat, she stared at me, truly stared. Then, with a small nod, she obeyed. We shifted course, fighting the elements, pulling the aircraft away from restricted lines. The cabin rattled, but the altimeter steadied. For the first time since I stepped into the cockpit, I felt like I belonged again. And yet, my heart wasn't just racing from the storm. It was racing from the woman beside me. Kinza. Her courage, her strength, the way she pushed me to confront my ghosts, it was pulling me somewhere I never expected to go again. But before I could process it, a shrill alarm erupted. Warning lights flared across the panel. Kinza's face paled. "Engine 2 is failing." My blood iced. One engine out in a storm like this could mean disaster. Passengers screamed as the plane lurched downward, trays clattering, babies wailing. I gritted my teeth, gripping the controls with Kinza. My voice was steel. "Not on my watch." Her hand brushed mine on the throttle as we fought to stabilize. For a split second, amid chaos, our eyes locked. And in that glance, I felt something I hadn't in years, belief. But the storm wasn't done with us yet. The cockpit roared with alarms, red lights flashing like sirens in a nightmare. The aircraft pitched downward, the nose dropping as gravity yanked us toward the storm. Every scream from the cabin pierced my chest like a blade. Kinza's voice cut through the chaos. "Saim, 60 seconds. If we don't stabilize, we'll lose altitude and hit the sea." My hands gripped the controls so tightly my knuckles whitened. Sweat blurred my vision. For a terrifying second, my mind went blank. All I could hear was the deafening storm, and my own heartbeat hammering like a war drum. And then, faint, muffled, but unmistakable, I heard her. "Baba, don't let go. Aisha. My daughter. My life. My reason." Somehow, through the roar of the engines and the chaos of terrified passengers, her voice reached me. I pictured her in row 12, clutching her stuffed bunny, eyes wide with trust. That trust wasn't just hope, it was fuel. I gritted my teeth and barked, "Kinza, cut power on engine 2, shut it down completely." She glanced at me. "That'll leave us with one engine in this storm." "Trust me," I snapped. For a heartbeat, doubt clouded her face. Then she nodded, flipping the switches. Engine 2 died with a groan, but the plane steadied ever so slightly, the tilt correcting by a fraction. I yanked the yoke, Kinza matching me on the throttle. The plane fought us like a wild beast, jerking, shuddering, threatening to break apart. My arms screamed with effort. My chest burned. "Come on," I whispered through clenched teeth. "Come on, girl. You're not dying on me today." The altimeter ticked lower. 15,000 feet. 14,800, 14,500. Passengers screamed. Luggage rained from the overhead bins. The storm battered us with another lightning strike, shaking the fuselage like a toy. Kinza's voice cracked with desperation. "We're not pulling up fast enough." I closed my eyes for half a second. And in that second I saw her again. My wife. Her smile, soft and endless, the way she used to whisper, "You were born for the sky, Saim." My grip tightened. I'm not losing another family to the skies. With a roar, I pulled back harder, muscles screaming, Kinza pushing beside me. The aircraft resisted, metal creaking like it would split apart. 14,200. 14,100. 14,050. And then, miraculously, the nose lifted. Just a degree. Then another. The descent slowed. The alarm shrieked, but the numbers stopped free-falling. Kinza's eyes widened. It's working. I let out a guttural yell, forcing every ounce of strength into that yoke, as though sheer willpower could lift 200 tons of steel. And slowly, agonizingly slowly, the plane began to climb. 14,000. 14,100. 14,200. The cabin roared with relief. Some passengers cried. Some prayed aloud. And me? I couldn't breathe. My lungs burned, my body trembling. But we weren't dead. Not yet. Kinza's hand was still on the throttle, her knuckles brushing mine. She looked at me, and for a second, just a second, there was no storm, no alarms, no falling sky. Just her eyes, fierce and alive, telling me without words, "You saved them." But relief was short-lived. The radio crackled. "Flight 747, you've deviated dangerously close to mountainous terrain. Immediate correction required." My blood froze. The storm hadn't just dragged us down, it had shoved us toward the jagged shadow of a mountain range. One wrong move, and we'd be nothing but fire and wreckage against the rocks. Kinza swore under her breath. "We don't have enough altitude to clear it." "Then we don't go over it," I said, my mind racing. "We go through the valley." Her eyes snapped to me. "Are you insane? The wind sheer in there could tear us apart." "Maybe," I admitted. "But it's our only shot." She stared at me, searching my face. And then, just like before, she trusted me. We dove into the valley. The plane rattled violently, every gust of wind slamming us sideways. Passengers screamed as the wings sliced terrifyingly close to the rocky walls. Lightning lit up the cliffs, jagged shadows flashing across the windows. My arms ached, my fingers numb, but I held on like my daughter's life depended on it, because it did. Kinza called out headings, her voice sharp, unflinching. I obeyed, weaving through death itself. Together, we were a rhythm, a force, two souls refusing to surrender. But as we cleared the final ridge, the unthinkable happened. The last functioning engine sputtered. Warning lights screamed. The thrust dropped. Kinza's voice cracked in horror. "We're losing the last engine." My chest caved in. No engine meant no thrust. No thrust meant we were a falling stone. The sound was apocalyptic. Metal shrieking, glass shattering, screams blending with the roar of water as the fuselage slammed against the riverbed. My body jolted forward, the harness cutting into my chest. Sparks lit up the cockpit like firework. For a split second I thought, this is it. But instinct wouldn't let me quit. My hands clamped the yoke, guiding the crippled beast as it skidded across the riverbed. Mud and water exploded on either side, waves crashing over the windows. The landing gear tore free, sparks igniting fire along the belly of the plane. Kinza's voice cut through the chaos. "Hold it straight, Saim." I grunted, muscles burning, teeth clenched. The aircraft skidded, spun, then miraculously steadied as the wings scraped against the riverbank. One final shudder, and silence. Absolute silence. The only sound was the rain tapping against the broken glass. I blinked, chest heaving. We were alive. Against every law of physics, every probability, we had survived. Kinza's hand was still gripping mine, trembling. Her eyes glistened wide, alive. You did it." "No," I whispered, shaking my head. "We did it." The intercom crackled, half dead. I pressed it anyway. My voice came out hoarse but strong. "This is Captain Saim. We are down. We are alive. Stay calm. Help is coming." A roar of sobs and cheers erupted from the cabin. I heard prayers of gratitude, people crying, hugging, kissing the ground through shattered windows. But one voice cut through everything. "Baba!" My heart seized. I tore off my harness and stumbled into the cabin. The sight broke me. Rows of terrified but breathing passengers, some injured, some crying, and in the middle of it, row 12, my daughter, standing on her seat, tears streaming down her cheeks. She ran into my arms, clutching me with a force that nearly knocked me down. "I knew you'd save us," she whispered into my chest. "I knew it, Baba." I held her tight, my own tears spilling freely for the first time in years. "I promised you, Mary John. I'll never let go." For a moment, the storm, the wreckage, the chaos, it all disappeared. It was just me and her, hearts beating as one. But then I looked up and saw Kinza. She was helping passengers out, commanding with strength but kindness, her uniform torn, face streaked with rain and soot, but her presence unshakable. Our eyes met through the crowd. In that look, 1,000 words passed. Respect, gratitude, and something else. Something I hadn't felt in years. Hours later, after rescue teams arrived, after the injured were taken and the shaken led away, I sat by the wreckage. Aisha curled up asleep on my lap, her small chest rising and falling peacefully. Kinza walked over, her boots splashing in the mud. She sat beside me, close but not too close, her eyes scanning the wreckage. "You were extraordinary today," she said softly. I let out a tired laugh. "Extraordinary? I nearly killed everyone." She turned, her gaze fierce. "No. You saved them. Without you, we'd be nothing but names in tomorrow's headlines." Her words pierced me. For so long, I had seen myself as broken, a failure who had abandoned the skies. But tonight, in this storm, in this wreckage, maybe I had found myself again. I looked at her. "Why did you trust me? You didn't even know if I still had it in me." Kinza smiled faintly, a rare softness breaking through her steel. "Because I saw something in you, Saim. Not just skill. Heart. And that's what flying is, not just machines and buttons. It's heart." Silence settled between us, heavy but not uncomfortable. I glanced at Aisha, her tiny hand clutching my shirt even in sleep. "She's all I have," I whispered. Kinza's eyes softened. "Then you have everything." For a long while, we just sat there, two survivors, two souls who had fought death and won. And somewhere deep inside me, I knew, this wasn't just the end of a flight. It was the beginning of something new. Something bigger than fear. Bigger than grief. It was the beginning of hope. As the rescue lights flashed across the wreckage, I held my daughter tighter, the storm finally breaking into a quiet drizzle. And in that fragile peace, Kinza's words lingered in my heart like a promise. I had been lost in row 12. But fate had forced me to rise again. And maybe, just maybe, it had given me a second chance. Sometimes life crashes us into the darkest valleys. But if we refuse to let go, if we hold on to love, to courage, to hope, we don't just survive. We rise again. And maybe, just maybe, God places someone beside us to remind us that the skies still belong to us.